Good evening. I'm here to refute the claim presented by Carrie. Her main claim states discrimination and misplacement of minorities in the American school system are leading to the widening gap between Caucasian and minority students, thus causing disproportionality in special education. Supporting her main claim are three secondary claims. These claims lack validity. They are supported with old data, and the main term of special education clearly is used in a homonym form. In the first of three secondary claims, the topic we are presented is that the American school system widens the language barrier, making it harder for a student of minority descent to get the same educational experience of a Caucasian student. The first, the fact backing this claim are which present minority students with the problem of language barrier and improper tools to educate the student to the standards of Caucasian students. After sifting through her works cited page, I found that the information supporting her secondary claim was not only 30 plus years old, but also that these articles were based off of racism rather than the inability to support minority students with the proper education. It has been a long time since then. The school systems have changed, and also the people. And now to the second of my three secondary claims. It states that the American school system places students in the special education system due to their cultural mismatch. To me, this sounds like racism again. Yet again, we do not live in those segregated times. Here, we will also find the use of the homonym special education. Which is it? Is it the special education as advanced placement classes, or is it the special education for the genetically disabled? We are not told, and therefore we are lost in her presentation. And finally, the third of the three secondary claims. As stated, the referral process discriminates against minorities due to the lack of understanding of culture and language. Now, the facts in this claim are vague. She talks about students not being able to take tests due to their ethnicity and culture background. She does not state which tests by the school system prove her claim. We are yet led to assume that the information that she presented is true. In my conclusion, my refutation is not only the topic, but more of the validity and the hard evidence supporting her claim. Special education helps blend minority students into the American culture. There must be a disproportion in special education. These minority students cannot sprout the knowledge overnight that Caucasian students were exposed to through their whole life. These are real facts and not assumptions. Thank you.
Right, the structural issues are fine. You do preview some of your response. The first point, you've got a pretty straightforward argument suggesting that the data is substantially old. Give us an example of some of the evidence that you used and give us the date on that information. And then tell us a little bit about what has changed, for instance, that would render this a moot. It would be really helpful if you had a counter piece of evidence on this particular point to show that this was not the case anymore as well. So the point that the evidence is old, that's a reasonable press to make. It's the kind of challenge, though, that you could make immediately upon looking at the argument, not wait, 2 weeks later, having had a chance to peruse it. I think you should be able to extend that argument a little bit more with more than just the one press. All right, the transition to the second point is also very clear. You bring up the issue of racism, and there's a challenge here. I think you need to kind of explain a little bit more how you think that the advocate and the people that the advocate is citing have focused on an issue separate from the achievements or the test scores, and are focusing instead on some explanation for racial motivation on these things. The idea that there's a homonym that confuses special ed with advanced placement or genetic medical issues, for instance, I think that that's believable if you can show, for instance, that advanced placement classes have been referred to as special education programs, or, for instance, if ELD is referred to as special education programs. And then maybe we could see that there is, in fact, overlap here, and there might be some problem with the reasoning that the advocate uses. On the third point, I thought that the test that there's a reference to tests. It's a little bit vague about how those tests that the advocate's using apply in this situation. You don't have any data on the point either, and so I'm not sure how I'm supposed to interpret your inference. I couldn't quite figure out at the end what the position was that you were taking, and I thought that you were much clearer at the beginning of the speech than you were at the end of the speech. It sounded sort of like you had fallen into the pattern of just, here's something to say on this issue, and I'm going to say it whether or not it's clear and applicable. And you want to be careful about that. Sometimes people just have this urge, let me give an answer, let me give an answer, let me give an answer. And plenty of times you don't need to give an answer to something if it's, if it wasn't developed, if it's not relevant. It's better to say nothing about it, or just point out, it's not really relevant, and then just give us the summary of the point that you were trying to make. All right.